We could use more images of finding unity in the midst of difficulty. This is the 14th in my series on making a mythology for our time. One of the things that both folklore and fiction have done for us is show us how to have difficult conversations, community building, finding unity in the midst of disaster. There's old stories about it. I want to focus this time on some of the newer ones. And one example that always comes to mind, Octavia Butler's books, Parable of the Sower and Parable of the Talents, where the people in the books undergo tremendous challenges, violent challenges, but they manage to piece together frameworks of meaning that help them survive and even flourish. So in the first novel, we also hear about an authoritarian movement that's sweeping a country, headed by somebody named President Donner. This book was written a while ago, by the way. And how to stand up under that, how to resist that. So some of that's in there. And another example would be from Fred Saberhagen's novel Berserker, where there's a pretty heroic figure, actually, who organizes a number of people for a protective effort against machines, AIs we would now say, that are destroying humanity. So Johan Carlson has to knit together a fighting force, even though there are people in it plotting against him. So some of those dynamics emerge that way. In my fiction, Simeon Mackenzie, who shows up in the second novel of the Lamplighter trilogy, he's the one who tells the story. He's in the second and third novels and also in a story or two. And he lives in the former United States, which on paper is still the United States, but it's been politically divided in two. In the center is the Heartland, which is a fairly conservative reactionary place, and then they are political opponents of the coastal states of America. And so Simeon's got dual allegiance because he has family in the Heartland, but he lives on the coast. And so one of his jobs, he realizes, is to have difficult conversations that help patch things back together, and more than that, help contribute to what the movement calls itself renewification, to bring the country together at a higher level than before, full of people who actually can face difficulties, past injustices, the need for reparation, things like that. So the novel doesn't spend a lot of time, either that one or Lamplighter, the one that follows. They don't spend a lot of time on those heartstead conversations that Simeon and others initiate, but there are a couple of examples of those kinds of conversations, especially between Simeon and his cousin Alex. So Simeon's a coastal, his cousin is a Heartlander, and they collide a few times, but they do it in a way that contains the emotions that come up, and it takes things in a positive direction. So that's a good alternative to manufactured outrage of the kind we see spreading not only through the United States, but all over the world right now. Technology makes it very easy to lie about things online. And so people are being overheated into these passionate, I'm against this, I'm against that, and there's not even an issue. I could name a dozen things that don't actually exist, that are put in place by people who want us to fight with each other. So as a new form of mythology, speculative fiction gives us examples of how to create community in the midst of hardship. And one of the things this requires, and we should add this to the list of character virtues I talked about in the previous video, is courage. The courage to actually acknowledge how things are, the courage to find one's voice, the courage to be flexible, to negotiate, things like that. And there's a quotation that comes to mind from Paul Tillich's book, The Courage to Be, that always stays with me in this regard, where he says, it takes enormous courage to resist the lure of appearances. The power of being which is manifest in such courage is so great that the gods tremble in fear of it.